At 39 years old, Marcus Williams made $61,000 a year as an HVAC technician. It was a good, honest living. It paid the bills, kept the lights on in the small bungalow on West Boulevard he'd inherited from his father, and allowed for a few simple pleasures. His life was built on the tangible, the hum of a well-tuned compressor, the satisfying click of a thermostat engaging, the weight of his tools in his hands. He was a man who understood systems, who could diagnose a problem by sound and feel. But the system of his own marriage had developed a fault so deep, so fundamental, that no amount of expertise could fix it. On a Tuesday in October, with a cold rain lashing against the windows of the house his father had loved, the entire system crashed. The time was 6:17 p.m. Marcus had just walked in, his work boots leaving damp prints on the welcome mat. The smell of his Carhartt jacket, a mix of rain and refrigerant oil, filled the small foyer. In the living room, his wife, Simone, was waiting for him. She was not dressed for a quiet evening at home. She wore a sharp, cream-colored blazer that he knew had cost close to $900 paired with severe black trousers. Her hair, usually a cascade of soft twists, was pulled back into a tight, formidable bun. Her deep brown skin, which he had always thought looked most beautiful in the soft light of their reading lamp, seemed hard and polished under the glare of the overhead light she insisted on using. Standing just behind her shoulder was her brother, Kevin. He was a man who seemed to have been assembled from a catalog of expensive trends, from his $800 Yeezy sneakers to the perfectly sculpted lines of his fade. He stood with his arms crossed, a silent, imposing statue of disapproval. On the coffee table, a simple piece of oak Marcus had refinished himself, sat a stack of papers. On top was a document titled Quit Claim Deed. Simone did not get up. She simply gestured to the papers with a perfectly manicured hand. "Marcus, we need to talk." He was tired. It had been a long day wrestling with a faulty commercial unit in a South End office building. "Can it wait, Simone? I was about to jump in the shower." "No," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. It was the voice she used with contractors or incompetent waiters. "It can't wait. I need you to sign this." He looked from her face to the papers, then to Kevin's smug expression. A knot of dread, cold and heavy, formed in his stomach. "Sign what? What is that?" "It's the house, Marcus," she said, as if explaining something to a child. "I'm moving forward with the separation. My lawyer drew this up. You sign the house over to me. It's the cleanest way." The rain hammered against the roof, each drop a tiny, percussive blow against the silence in the room. He could hear the old house groaning under the assault of the wind. He had patched that section of the roof himself last summer, spending a hot Saturday spreading tar and replacing shingles, a job that cost him $200 in materials and a full day of sweat. "The house?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "Simone, this was my father's house." "And it's our marital home," she countered, her voice sharp. "I've put money into it. We've lived here together. This is the equitable solution." Kevin finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. "Just sign it, man. It's for the best. A clean break." Marcus looked around the room, at the worn armchair where his father used to sit, at the bookshelves he had built into the wall, at the faint pencil marks near the doorframe where his father had tracked his height as a boy. This wasn't just a house. It was a repository of his entire life. He made $61,000 a year. The house, even with its old plumbing and drafty windows, was the only real asset he had in the world. Losing it would mean starting from zero at almost 40 years old. "You want everything," he said, the realization landing with the force of a physical blow. Simone's expression didn't soften. "Sign the quitclaim, Marcus," she said, her voice as cold and hard as the glass top of the dining table she'd bought for $2,000 and now hated. "You owe us this." He looked at her, this woman he had loved, this woman he had promised to build a life with, and saw a complete stranger. He had no idea this was just the beginning of the betrayal, the first turn of a screw designed to strip him of everything he had. He was a simple man, an HVAC technician who believed in fixing what was broken. But this was not a breakdown. This was a demolition. If you've ever been made to feel small, if you've ever been told your contribution doesn't matter, then you know the feeling that was slowly beginning to ignite in Marcus's chest. Stick with us, because the story of how this quiet, hard-working man dismantled their entire scheme, piece by documented piece, is one you won't want to miss. Their life hadn't always been a landscape of cold demands and legal documents. Marcus remembered the beginning, 7 years ago, with a clarity that now felt painful. He'd met Simone at a community jazz festival in Freedom Park. He was there with friends, enjoying a beer and the music. She was luminous, laughing with a group of her girlfriends, her twists bouncing as she moved. He, a man more comfortable with schematics than small talk, had somehow found the courage to approach her. Their courtship was simple and sweet. Dinners at small, family-owned restaurants in Noda, long walks around the lake at UNC Charlotte, sharing dreams on the worn couch in his small apartment. He was making about $50,000 a year then, and she was just starting her career in banking, ambitious and bright. She said she loved his stability, the way his hands, though calloused from work, could be so gentle. A year into their relationship, his father, James, got sick. It was fast and unforgiving. During those last few months, Marcus spent every spare moment at the bungalow on West Boulevard, caring for the man who had raised him. Simone was there too, bringing meals and offering a comforting presence. Marcus saw her kindness as a sign, a confirmation that she was the one. Shortly before he passed, James called Marcus into his bedroom. The air was thick with the scent of medicine and old paper. His father, a proud, strong black man who had worked for the city for 40 years, was frail, but his eyes were clear. "This house," James said, his voice a rasp. "It's yours. I'm selling it to you, $1. He pushed a pre-signed deed across the bedside table. "It's all paid off. Has been for years. It's your foundation, son. Don't ever let anyone take your foundation." Then he reached into the drawer and pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope. On the front, in his father's familiar, blocky handwriting, it said, "Marcus, open when she wants everything." Marcus had laughed, a sad, choked sound. "Dad, what is this? Simone loves me. She'd never—" "Love is a beautiful thing, son," James interrupted, his gaze steady. "But life is long. People change. You are a good man, a trusting man. That is your strength. It can also be your weakness. Just take it. Put it somewhere safe, and promise me you won't open it unless you have to." Marcus promised. He took the envelope, heavy and stiff, and after his father passed, he tucked it away in the bottom of an old metal lockbox filled with his father's army medals and old family photos. He forgot about it. He and Simone got married 6 months later. They moved into the bungalow. It was small, just under 1,200 square feet, but it was theirs. Or he thought it was theirs. He spent the first year of their marriage fixing it up. He poured his heart and his weekends into the place. He replaced the old, rattling window units with a modern central air system, a job that would have cost a customer over $8,000. He did it himself over 3 weekends. He rewired the kitchen, installing new outlets and recessed lighting, a $12,500 value in labor and materials. He built a beautiful cedar deck in the backyard, spending $4,000 of his savings on lumber and hardware. Simone at first seemed to appreciate it. She would bring him lemonade while he worked in the garden, planting the azaleas his mother had loved. But as her career took off, her tastes began to change. Her salary quickly surpassed his, climbing to over $100,000 a year. The small bungalow started to feel to her like a cage. The signs were small at first, a dismissive comment about the linoleum floor in the kitchen. "It's just so dated, Marcus." A preference for her friend's sprawling new builds in Ballantine. She started buying things, expensive things that seemed alien in their modest home. A $3,500 Louis Vuitton purse sat on the entryway table next to his beat-up lunch cooler. She insisted they dine at places like the Capitol Grill downtown, where dinner for two easily cost $400, a sum that made Marcus's stomach clench. He'd look at the bill and think of the new water heater the house needed, a project he'd been putting off that would cost $900. He tried to keep up. He funneled his entire paycheck into their joint account, which covered the mortgage, which was only taxes and insurance, the utilities, the groceries. Her much larger salary, she explained, was for investments and our future. He trusted her. He was the fixer, the builder, the steady hand. She was the planner, the visionary. That was their system. But the system was a lie. The joint account was always hovering near empty by the end of the month, while she was buying $600 Christian Louboutin shoes and talking about trips to Cabo. The domestic normalcy he cherished became a stage for her growing dissatisfaction. One Saturday, he was in the backyard, carefully tending to his tomato plants. He was proud of his garden. It saved them hundreds on groceries every summer. Simone came out onto the deck he'd built, holding her phone. "My friend Brenda just closed on her townhome in Ballantine," she announced, not looking at him, but at the photos on her screen. 5 bedrooms, chef's kitchen. It's gorgeous. "That's nice," Marcus said, pinching off a sucker from a tomato vine. She sighed, a sound of pure theatrical frustration. "It's more than nice, Marcus. It's a real home. We're living in your father's past. I want a future." She looked at his dirt-stained hands and the simple green plants. "This is all so small." That one word, small, echoed in his mind for weeks. His life, his work, his home, his love, it was all small to her. He was small to her. The facade of their happy, humble life was crumbling, and he was the only one trying to patch the cracks. He had no idea she was already drafting blueprints for a whole new structure, one that had no room for him at all. The pressure didn't just appear on that rainy Tuesday. It had been building for over a year, a slow, crushing weight of disdain. The escalating betrayal wasn't a single act, but a campaign of 1,000 cuts, each one designed to diminish him, to make him feel unworthy of the very ground he stood on. It started with his job. What was once his steady, honest work became that dirty job. Simone would wrinkle her nose when he came home, smelling of machine oil and sweat. "Can you please just go straight to the shower? I don't want you tracking that smell through the house." She said it in front of her friends once, a group of women who dripped with brand names and quiet judgment. They were over for wine, sitting on the $3,000 West Elm sofa she'd bought to replace his perfectly comfortable, if worn, leather one. Marcus had come in through the back door to avoid them, but she'd called him into the living room. "Marcus, say hi to everyone." He stood there in his work clothes, feeling like an exhibit. One of the women looked at his steel-toed boots, a pair of Red Wings that had cost him $200 and lasted for years, with a faint look of disgust. "Simone tells us you work in construction?" she asked, the word dripping with condescension. "I'm an HVAC technician," he said, his voice even. "Oh, right. The air conditioning thing," she said, and turned back to her glass of 80 a bottle wine. He saw Simone give a tight, apologetic smile to her friends, as if apologizing for his very existence. The humiliation was a hot flush on his skin. He retreated to the kitchen, his own home suddenly feeling like hostile territory. Then came the attacks on his character. He was unambitious. He was too simple. he was holding her back. Her brother, Kevin, became her primary reinforcement. He started showing up unannounced, always dressed in some new piece of designer streetwear that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly grocery budget. He'd lean against the kitchen counter, a $1,100 iPhone in his hand, and offer unsolicited life advice. "You know, man," Kevin said one Saturday afternoon while Marcus was trying to repair the garbage disposal, "Simone is a star. She's going places. You got to keep up." "I'm happy with my life, Kevin," Marcus said, his knuckles scraping against the inside of the sink. "Yeah, but is she?" Kevin shot back. "Look at this place. It's fine for what it is. But she deserves more. You're content with this, and it's dragging her down. A man's got to provide a certain lifestyle." The implication was clear. Marcus was not a real provider. His $61,000, his sweat equity, his constant maintenance of their home, it was nothing. It was small. The garbage disposal whirred to life, spitting out a fleck of rotten food that landed on Marcus's shirt. Kevin smirked. The cruelty became more direct, more personal. Simone started mocking his prized possessions, the few things he had that were just for him. His watch, an $89 Timex his father had given him for his 18th birthday, became a particular target. One evening, they were getting ready to go to a dinner for her bank. She was fastening a diamond bracelet, a piece she'd bought for herself for over $4,000. She glanced at his wrist. "Are you really wearing that watch?" "I wear it every day, Simone. It was from my dad." "It's embarrassing," she said, not even looking at him, just admiring her own reflection in the mirror. "It looks cheap. It makes us look cheap. My boss wears a Rolex that costs more than your car." His car was a 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it, paid off and reliable. It was worth maybe $6,000. The comparison was meant to wound, and it did. He started to feel like a ghost in his own home. She'd come home late, smelling of expensive perfume and wine he didn't recognize. She'd claim she was networking with clients or out with the girls. The emotional and physical distance between them grew into a vast, cold chasm. They slept in the same bed but might as well have been in different countries. The silence was louder than any argument. The final phase of the campaign began, about a month before she presented the quitclaim deed. She started talking about their finances, framing everything as his failure. "Marcus, we're struggling," she said one night, showing him a spreadsheet on her laptop. The screen was filled with numbers he didn't understand, graphs pointing downward. "Your income just doesn't cover the lifestyle we should be living. The house is a money pit. The repairs, the taxes, it's draining us." It was pure gaslighting. He knew exactly what the house cost to run, about $400 a month in taxes and insurance, and maybe another $100 in utilities. His salary more than covered it. The drain was her spending, the clothes, the dinners, the mysterious investments. But the spreadsheet, with its official-looking charts, was designed to confuse and overwhelm him. "I need to take control of our assets to get us back on track," she said, her tone businesslike and final. "The best way to do that is to put the house solely in my name. It gives me the liquidity and leverage I need to make some strategic moves." He was exhausted. He was beaten down. He felt like he was drowning, and she was describing the water. So when that rainy Tuesday came and she put the papers on the table, it wasn't a surprise attack. It was the final, inevitable blow in a long and brutal siege. He sat at the coffee table, the quitclaim deed in front of him. The legalese was impenetrable. Kevin loomed behind him. Simone sat opposite, her face impassive. I need to read this," he stammered. "There's nothing to read," Simone said impatiently. "It's a standard quitclaim. It just transfers the title. My lawyer said it's the simplest way. No fuss, No fighting in court. Why, though? He asked, his voice cracking. Why do you need the house? Because I deserve it, she snapped, her composure finally breaking. I've been paying for our life for years, while you play with your tools in the garage. I've put up with this tiny, pathetic house and your lack of ambition because I was trying to be a good wife. I'm done. This house is the only thing of value. It's my compensation. You owe me this, Marcus. Her words were a physical force, pressing the air from his lungs. He looked at her brother, who just nodded grimly. She's right, man. You owe her. He felt a profound sense of failure, a deep, soul-crushing shame. He had failed to make her happy. He had failed to be the man she wanted. In that moment, he believed her. He believed he was small. He believed he owed her. His hand trembled as he picked up the pen she offered him. A sleek, heavy, $450 Mont Blanc. He thought of his own pen, a $5 Uniball he kept in his shirt pocket. He signed his name on the line she indicated. The ink was black and final. He had just signed away his father's house, his foundation, his entire net worth, for nothing. As he lifted the pen, a single tear escaped his eye and landed on the signature, slightly blurring the ink. Simone didn't notice. She was already gathering the papers, her movements crisp and efficient, her victory complete. In the days that followed, a heavy, suffocating fog of despair settled over Marcus. He moved through his life in a daze. He went to work, diagnosed faulty capacitors, and recharged refrigerant lines, his hands moving with an ingrained muscle memory that his mind couldn't access. He ate, but didn't taste his food. He slept, but woke up more exhausted than before. Simone was gone, having moved her things out with unnerving speed the day after he signed. The house was eerily silent, filled with the ghosts of her expensive, unwanted furniture and the lingering scent of her perfume. He was alone with the magnitude of his loss. He felt like a fool, a weak, trusting fool who had been played from the very beginning. The phrase his father had spoken so many years ago echoed in his head. You are a good man, a trusting man. That is your strength. It can also be your weakness. About a week after the signing, on a bleak Saturday morning, a strange and unfamiliar feeling began to cut through the fog. Anger. It wasn't a hot, explosive rage, but a cold, sharp, and intensely focused fury. He was sitting at the kitchen table staring at a stack of mail. Among the bills and junk mail was a glossy postcard from a real estate agent. Just listed in your neighborhood, it screamed. He almost threw it away, but then the address caught his eye. It was his address, his house. It was listed for sale for $450,000. She wasn't just taking the house, she was flipping it. Immediately. The compensation she claimed she was owed wasn't the house itself, but its cash value. The cold, calculated nature of it all shocked him out of his stupor. Something wasn't right. The speed, the efficiency, the way her lawyer had everything ready to go. A thought, a memory, surfaced. His father, a man who believed in public records and civic duty, had once sat him down at their old desktop computer and showed him the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds website. Everything that's official is here, son, he had said. Deeds, liens, everything. It's the county's memory. It doesn't forget. With a surge of adrenaline, Marcus went to his laptop, a 5-year-old Dell that cost him $600. He typed in the website address. His heart was pounding in his chest. He navigated to the real estate record search. He typed in his own name. A list of documents appeared. Mortgages from decades ago, all marked satisfied. And then, at the top of the list, 2 recent filings. The first was the quitclaim deed, filed 2 days after he'd signed it. He clicked on the PDF, and the document he'd signed in a haze of misery appeared on his screen. His own signature looked like the scrawl of a stranger. Then he looked at the second document. It had been filed on the exact same day, but the timestamp was different. The deed was filed at 9:31 p.m. This other document was filed at 9:18 p.m., 13 minutes before. The document type was affidavit. The description read, "Affidavit of marital hardship." His blood ran cold. He had never seen or heard of any affidavit. He clicked the link. A 2-page document filled the screen. It was a sworn statement under penalty of perjury, signed by Simone. His eyes scanned the text, and the coldness in his veins turned to ice. The affidavit was a work of pure fiction, a tapestry of vicious lies woven to create a narrative of him as a monster. It claimed he was financially controlling, citing his attempts to budget their spending as proof. It alleged emotional abuse, twisting his pleas for them to reconnect into accusations of manipulative behavior. It painted him as an unstable and neglectful husband, creating an intolerable marital hardship that the document argued made the immediate, uncontested transfer of the primary marital asset, the house, a necessary and equitable remedy to protect the well-being of the aggrieved party, Simone Williams. It was a legal justification for the theft of his home, prepackaged and ready to go. She hadn't just asked him to sign the deed. She had created a fraudulent legal cushion to ensure the transfer would be bulletproof against any future challenge. She had anticipated he might change his mind and had already built her defense. He scrolled to the bottom of the second page. There was Simone's signature, crisp and confident. And below it, in the space for the witness and notary, was a name that made him physically sick. The witness to this slanderous document, the person swearing they had seen Simone sign this pack of lies, was her brother, Kevin. The notary stamp was from a mobile notary service. They had done this together, a coordinated conspiracy. The timestamp seared itself into his brain, 9:18 p.m. On the night he had signed the papers, while he was still reeling from her demand, she and her brother had already met with a notary and filed this fraudulent document online. They had it ready before she even confronted him. The entire scene, her cold demeanor, Kevin's silent intimidation, it was all theater. The outcome had already been decided and documented. He leaned back in his chair, the cheap wood creaking under his weight. The rain from that night seemed to be falling inside his chest, a cold, relentless downpour. He felt the fool again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the shame of being weak. It was the white-hot rage of being deceived. They hadn't just taken his house. They had tried to steal his name, his character. And they had documented their crime for all the world to see, preserving it in the county's unforgetting memory. What she didn't know was that in her arrogance, in her rush to build a fortress of lies, she had handed him the very tools he would need to tear it all down. The rage that solidified in Marcus's gut was a new and unfamiliar substance. It was cold, hard, and heavy. It displaced the grief and the shame, leaving in their place a profound and chilling clarity. He saw the last year of his life not as a series of personal failures, but as a meticulously executed strategy of which he was the target. He had not lost a marriage. He had been the victim of a long con. And the first rule of dealing with a con artist is to never let them know you're onto them. He knew he couldn't confront her. Not yet. A confrontation would be emotional, messy. It would give her a chance to lie, to manipulate, to gaslight him further. He needed evidence. He needed a plan. He needed to play the part she had cast for him, the defeated, simple man. So he began to act. It was the performance of his life, and it tore him apart inside. He had to pretend to be the broken man she expected while secretly gathering the ammunition he needed. Each lie he told, each moment he feigned normalcy, was a scene in a grim play. The first scene took place over the phone. He took a deep breath, picturing the fraudulent affidavit on his screen, and dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice wary. "Marcus?" "Hey," he said, forcing a note of weary resignation into his voice. "Just calling to see how you're doing. You settled in your new place?" There was a pause. She was likely surprised he wasn't begging or yelling. "I am," she said, her tone shifting, becoming brighter, more condescending. "It's wonderful. You wouldn't believe the light. And the countertops are quartz. Everything is brand new." "That's great, Simone. I'm glad you're happy," he said, each word a betrayal of the fury churning inside him. "I'm starting my new life, Marcus," she said, a hint of pity in her voice. "It's time you started thinking about yours. Have you found an apartment yet?" "Looking," he lied. "Just, packing up my stuff here. It's a lot." "Well, don't take too long," she said, her voice turning sharp again. "The realtor is starting showings next week. The place needs to be empty and clean." He hung up the phone, his hand shaking. He had done it. He had kept his voice steady. She suspected nothing. He began packing, but not to leave. He was conducting an archaeological dig of their shared life. He went through every drawer, every closet, every box. He was looking for her mistakes, for the breadcrumbs of her deception, and he found them. In the back of the closet, tucked into a shoebox for a pair of $800 heels, he found a folder. Inside were receipts. Receipts for new furniture from Crate and Barrel and Restoration Hardware. A tufted velvet sofa for $4,000. A marble dining table for $2,800. A complete bedroom set for $5,500. The total came to over $15,000. He looked at the dates. They were all from the month before she'd asked him to sign the deed. While she was telling him they were struggling and the house was a money pit, she was furnishing a new life he knew nothing about. He took out his phone, a simple Samsung that cost $300, and carefully photographed every single receipt, making sure the dates were clear. Each photo was another brick in the wall of his case. A few days later, Kevin called. His tone was laced with a kind of gloating sympathy. "Hey, man, Simone told me you called. Just wanted to check on you. No hard feelings, right? It was just business." "No hard feelings," Marcus said, his voice a monotone. The image of Kevin's signature on the affidavit flashed in his mind. "Good, good," Kevin said, relieved. "Listen, Simone mentioned you were packing. I've got a buddy with a moving truck. He can give you a deal if you need a hand." The offer was so galling, so dripping with condescending charity, that Marcus almost broke. They were offering to help him move out of the house they had stolen from him. "Thanks, Kevin. I'll let you know," he said, and ended the call before he could say what he was really thinking. The hardest part was maintaining the facade in person. The realtor, a brisk woman named Cynthia who wore an $700 Armani suit, came by to take measurements and photos for the online listing. Marcus had to be there, pretending to be the compliant, departing ex-husband. "So you'll have all of your personal items out by the 15th? Cynthia asked, not looking at him, but at her iPad. "Yes, of course," Marcus said, standing beside the bookshelves he had built with his own two hands. "Excellent. The seller, Simone, wants a quick closing. We've already had several inquiries. A house in this area, at this price point, it will go fast." She smiled a thin, professional smile. "It's a hot market." He nodded, a lump in his throat. He watched her walk through his father's house, seeing only square footage and commission. She pointed to the new central air unit he'd installed. "Oh, that's a huge plus. We'll be sure to highlight that in the listing. Buyers love new mechanicals." He felt a bitter, ironic laugh build in his chest, but he swallowed it down. He was a ghost, haunting the last days of his old life. He was playing dumb, but he was not dumb. He was a hunter, and he was letting his prey walk deeper and deeper into the trap they had set for him. Every condescending word, every receipt, every lie was being collected, cataloged, and stored. The pressure was building, and soon the system would blow. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with the crinkle of old paper. After another hollow conversation with Simone, where she impatiently reminded him of the deadline to vacate, Marcus felt a desperate need for a tangible connection to his past, to a time before all this. He went to the hall closet and pulled down the old metal lockbox from the top shelf. It was heavy and cool to the touch. He sat on the floor and opened it. The familiar smell of old paper and cedar filled the air. He sifted through his father's army medals, his honorable discharge papers, a faded photo of his parents on their wedding day. And there, at the very bottom, was the envelope. The thick, cream-colored manila, heavy with purpose. His father's handwriting seemed to look right through him. Marcus, open when she wants everything. She didn't just want everything, she had already taken it. His hands, usually so steady when calibrating delicate machinery, trembled as he tore open the seal. Inside was not a letter, as he had always imagined. It was a single folded legal document and a short, handwritten note on a piece of lined paper. He read the note first. Son, if you are reading this, I am sorry. I hoped you would never need it. This house is your birthright. It was your mother's dream. I paid it off in 1998. It is yours free and clear. This paper I have enclosed is a deed of survivorship. I had my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, draw it up the day after your mother's funeral. It makes you and me joint owners. The law says when one of us passes, the other becomes the sole owner, instantly, automatically. It bypasses everything else. It is stronger than a will, stronger than a marriage. I never filed it because I didn't want to pay the transfer tax then, but it is legal. It is notarized. All you have to do is take this deed and my death certificate to the Register of Deeds office. That is your proof. The house became yours, and yours alone, the moment I took my last breath. No one can take your foundation. Love, Dad. Marcus unfolded the other document. It was titled Deed of Survivorship. The language was dense, but the core of it was clear. It named James Williams and Marcus Williams as joint tenants with right of survivorship. It was dated 5 years before he had even met Simone. It was signed by his father, and the notary seal was embossed and clear, dated the same day. He sat on the floor of the hallway, the two documents in his hand, and felt a wave of emotion so powerful it almost knocked the wind out of him. It was grief for his father's foresight born of a quiet, protective love. It was gratitude for a gift he never knew he had. And it was a cold, hard resolve. His father hadn't just left him a house, he had left him a weapon. The next morning, Marcus looked for Mr. Henderson, the lawyer his father had mentioned. He found that the old lawyer had retired years ago, but the firm still existed. He called and was referred to a young, sharp partner named Alana Hayes. Her office was in a modest brick building in University City, a world away from the glass towers of uptown Charlotte where Simone worked. Alana Hayes was a black woman in her late 30s with intelligent eyes, and her hair in elegant locks adorned with a few silver beads. She listened to Marcus's story without interruption, her expression calm and professional. He laid out the documents on her polished desk, the quitclaim deed he had signed, the printout of the fraudulent affidavit, the photos of the receipts, and finally, the deed of survivorship and his father's death certificate. She examined each document carefully, her silence filling the room. She spent a long time looking at the affidavit, then at the survivorship deed. She tapped the date on the deed with a long, unpolished nail. Then she looked up at Marcus, and for the first time, a slow smile spread across her face. "Mr. Williams," she said, her voice a mix of professional satisfaction and righteous anger, They have made a critical and very, very expensive mistake. Her hourly rate was $450, a sum that would have made him flinch a month ago. Now, he didn't hesitate. What do we do? What they did was commit fraud, Alana explained, her tone becoming crisp and strategic. The affidavit is a false instrument filed with a government agency. That's a felony. The quitclaim deed they pressured you to sign is based on a false premise that the house was marital property to be divided. But this, she held up the deed of survivorship, changes everything. She laid out the plan. It was simple, elegant, and devastating. This deed of survivorship predates your marriage. Upon your father's death, by operation of law, you became the sole owner of the property. It was never a marital asset. It was always your separate, inherited property. The quitclaim deed you signed is legally meaningless because you were coerced into signing away something under the false pretense that she had a right to it, a pretense backed by a fraudulent document. So what's the first step? Marcus asked, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in weeks. The first step is to correct the record, Alana said, her eyes gleaming. We will record this deed of survivorship. It will go on public record, establishing your unbroken sole ownership of the property since the date of your father's death. It will legally supersede their quitclaim. Then we inform the district attorney's office about the fraudulent affidavit. We don't make threats. We don't negotiate. We simply present the facts to the authorities and let the consequences fall where they may. She looked him in the eye. Are you ready for this, Mr. Williams? Because once we start, it will be fast. Marcus thought of Simone's condescending voice, of Kevin's smug face, of the word small. He thought of his father's love, strong enough to reach across time and protect him. I'm ready, he said. Simone thought she had won. She had the house, the new life, and had painted Marcus as the villain. But she forgot one thing: the sealed envelope. What do you think is inside? Let us know in the comments, and don't go anywhere because the strike is coming. The plan was a masterclass in quiet, documented finality. There would be no screaming matches, no dramatic confrontations. The strike would be executed not with angry words, but with the cold, irrefutable power of notarized documents and official filings. Alana Hayes called it a procedural knockout. The day they chose was a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after Marcus had signed the quitclaim deed. The weather had turned, the autumn rain replaced by a bright, clear sky that seemed to mock the storm about to break in Simone's life. At 9:45 a.m., Marcus met Alana at the Mecklenburg County Government Center in uptown Charlotte. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt and his best pair of khakis. He held a folder containing the original deed of survivorship and his father's death certificate. His heart was hammering against his ribs, but his hands were steady. At precisely 10:00 a.m., Alana walked up to the counter at the Register of Deeds office. She presented the survivorship deed and the death certificate to the clerk. "We'd like to record these, please." The clerk, a pleasant woman with her hair in neat braids, examined the documents. She scanned the notary seal on the old deed. She typed information into her computer. "Everything seems to be in order," she said. She stamped the documents with a heavy, satisfying thud, fed them into a scanner, and handed Alana a receipt for the $26 filing fee. That was it. With that simple bureaucratic act, the public record was corrected. The quitclaim deed, based on the false premise of marital property, was now legally subordinate to a superior prior claim. In the eyes of the law, the house on West Boulevard had been Marcus Williams' sole and separate property all along. The sale listing was now legally invalid. Simone was trying to sell a house that did not belong to her. At 10:15 a.m., Alana made her next move. She walked across the street to the courthouse and filed a formal complaint package with the district attorney's office. The package contained a cover letter detailing the situation, a copy of the fraudulent affidavit, a copy of the quitclaim deed, and Marcus's sworn statement detailing the coercion and the timeline of events. The complaint requested an investigation into the filing of a false instrument under North Carolina General Statute Paragraph 14, 118.5, a Class 1 felony. At 10:30 a.m., the third and final piece of the plan was set in motion. A process server, a tall, no-nonsense man hired by Alana's firm for $75, was already waiting in the meticulously landscaped visitor parking lot of the luxury townhome complex in Ballantyne. He had a description of Simone and her white BMW 3 Series, a car with a base price of $43,000. As Simone left her townhome, dressed for her day at the bank in a sleek, dark blue dress, the process server approached her. "Simone Williams?" "Yes," she said, annoyed at being interrupted. He handed her a large envelope. "You've been served." Inside the envelope was not a request or a lawsuit from Marcus. It was a formal notice of lis pendens, a legal document informing her that the title of the West Boulevard property was now in dispute, effectively freezing any sale. It also contained a cease and desist letter drafted by Alana, demanding she and her agents immediately halt all efforts to sell or encumber the property. And finally, a courtesy copy of the complaint filed with the district attorney. Marcus was miles away, on a rooftop in Dilworth, calibrating a 5-ton commercial HVAC unit. The sun was warm on his back. He was just tightening a valve when his phone, which he'd set on a ledge, began to vibrate. He ignored it. It vibrated again and again. He finished his work, wiped his hands on a rag, and finally picked up the phone. The screen was a cascade of notifications. 3 missed calls from Simone, 2 from Kevin, a string of frantic text messages, and 5 new voicemails. He took a deep breath, put the phone to his ear, and began to listen. The sound of their world collapsing was delivered in 1-minute increments. Voicemail 1 was from Simone, time-stamped 10:41 a.m. Her voice was sharp with confusion and annoyance. "Marcus, what is this? I just got some legal papers delivered to me. My realtor just called me, screaming that the sale of the house is frozen. She said there's a title issue. What did you do? This is going to cost me money. Call me back immediately." Voicemail 2 was from Kevin, time-stamped 10:55 a.m. His voice was a low growl of disbelief and rage. "What game are you playing? A deed of survivorship? Simone's lawyer is laughing, saying it's nothing. You think you're smart, filing some old piece of paper? You are going to regret messing with us, Marcus. You have no idea." He was wrong. Marcus had a very clear idea. Voicemail 3 was Simone again, 11:15 a.m. The annoyance was gone, replaced by the high, thin sound of panic. "Marcus, my boss just called me into her office. The bank's legal department got a notification. They're talking about a fraud investigation. The affidavit? What about the affidavit? That was just a formality," the lawyer suggested. "You can't be serious. You are trying to ruin my life over a stupid house." "Pick up the phone." Voicemail 4, another from Simone, arrived at 11:40 a.m. The panic had curdled into desperate pleading. Okay, I'm sorry. I was stressed. I was wrong. We can talk about this. We can work something out. Don't do this, please. I'll lose everything. The new place. The money I put down. Please, Marcus. Just call your lawyer and stop it." The final voicemail, time-stamped 12:05 p.m., was Simone again. Her voice was broken, choked with sobs. It was a sound he hadn't heard in years. "You loved me once. How could you do this to me? I have nothing. They're going to charge me. Kevin, too. He was just trying to help me. Please, Marcus, just make it stop. I'm so scared." Marcus listened to all 5 messages, his face a mask of stone. The sun felt good on his skin. The city skyline stretched out before him. He felt no triumph, no joy. He didn't even feel anger anymore. He felt quiet. The quiet of a system that has been perfectly balanced. The quiet of a pressure that has finally been equalized. He deleted the voicemails, put his phone back in his pocket, and went back to work. The consequences were now in motion, and they were no longer his to control. They were hers. The fallout was not a single explosion, but a cascade of failures, each one triggering the next. Simone and Kevin had built their plan on a foundation of arrogance and lies, and when that foundation was removed, the entire structure of their lives collapsed with breathtaking speed. Marcus watched from a distance, receiving updates from his lawyer, Alana, who enumerated each consequence with calm, professional precision. First, the house. The newly recorded deed of survivorship was an unbreakable legal fact. The title company for the prospective buyer immediately declared the title uninsurable for Simone's sale, and the $450,000 deal evaporated overnight. Because the failure was due to her inability to produce a clean title, Simone automatically forfeited the $5,000 earnest money deposit she had paid to the buyer's agent as part of the listing agreement. The for sale sign was removed from the front yard of the West Boulevard bungalow a week later. The house was, and always had been, Marcus's. Second, the legal charges. The district attorney's office, presented with a clear-cut case of a fraudulent document being filed with a government agency, moved swiftly. 2 weeks after Alana filed the complaint, both Simone and her brother Kevin were formally charged with felony filing of a false instrument. The news was a small article in the Charlotte Observer's online police blotter, but the impact was devastating. They each had to hire expensive criminal defense attorneys. Alana estimated their initial retainers were likely in the range of $25,000 apiece, money they had to scramble to find. Third, Simone's career. She worked for a major national bank in Charlotte's financial district, a job that required state and federal licensing and a spotless background check. The moment the felony charge became public record, she was called into a meeting with Human Resources and the bank's internal compliance department. Her $120,000 a year job was immediately suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the criminal case. Her security badge was deactivated, and she was escorted from the building, carrying her personal effects in a cardboard box. Her career in finance was, for all intents and purposes, over. Fourth, Kevin's business. Kevin styled himself as a brand consultant, a vague title for a man who mostly leveraged his connections to get contracts for his friends. His largest client was a regional beverage company, a relationship that brought in over $80,000 a year. When the company's CEO, a stickler for ethics, read about the fraud charges, he terminated Kevin's contract immediately via a terse email. More than half of his income vanished in an instant. Fifth, the luxury lifestyle. Simone's new life was built on the quicksand of anticipated income from the house sale and her high salary. With both gone, she was financially ruined. She couldn't make the next month's $4,200 rent payment on the Ballantyne townhome. She received an eviction notice. The $15,000 worth of brand new furniture, all purchased on store credit lines she could no longer pay, was repossessed. The images of the crate and barrel truck hauling away her tufted velvet sofa and marble dining table were a stark public symbol of her downfall. She was forced to break the lease on her white BMW, incurring thousands in penalties, and ended up moving into a cramped, one-bedroom apartment in a rundown complex off Sugar Creek Road, paying $900 a month. The social consequences were just as brutal. The friends who had sipped wine and judged Marcus's work boots vanished. The family members who had supported Simone's narrative of the long-suffering wife were horrified to learn the truth. documented in the public record. She and Kevin became pariahs, their arrogance and cruelty exposed for all to see. One evening, about 2 months after the strike, Marcus was changing the oil in his Toyota Camry in the driveway of his house. A sleek black car he didn't recognize pulled up to the curb. Simone got out of the passenger side. She looked smaller, diminished. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back, but it lacked its former severity. She walked hesitantly up the driveway. Marcus? He didn't stop his work. He continued tightening the oil filter. Simone, can we please talk? She asked, her voice soft. There's nothing to talk about, he said, not looking at her. You should be talking to your lawyer. My lawyer costs $600 an hour, she said, a bitter edge to her voice. I'm going to have to plead guilty. They're recommending probation and a fine, but it's a felony. I'll never work in my field again. Kevin, he might lose his business entirely. Marcus finally stopped and looked at her. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag. Those are the consequences of your actions, Simone. Yours and his. You filed a fraudulent document to steal my father's house. It's that simple. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. I was wrong. I was so arrogant. I thought I deserved it. I looked down on you, on this house, on your life. And your life is the only one that's still standing. She looked around at the small, sturdy bungalow, at the neat garden, at the old, reliable car. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I truly am. He looked at her, at the woman who had tried to destroy him, and he felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, not even satisfaction, just a vast, quiet emptiness where his love for her used to be. I hear you, he said, and that was all. It was not forgiveness. It was not absolution. It was just an acknowledgement of her words. He turned back to his car, opened a fresh bottle of $8 Castrol motor oil, and began to pour. She stood there for another moment in the fading light, then turned and got back in the car, a stranger leaving a place that had never truly been hers. 1 year later, the late afternoon sun streamed through the open roll-up door of the garage on West Boulevard. The space, which had once been a cluttered repository for lawn equipment and old boxes, was now transformed. The concrete floor was sealed and spotless. 2 professional-grade HVAC training stations, complete with condensers, air handlers, and a web of ductwork, stood against one wall. A large whiteboard covered in diagrams and equations dominated the other. The air smelled of clean metal and possibility. This was Marcus's new venture, the Williams Trade Initiative. He had used a small portion of his savings to convert the garage into a workshop. 3 days a week, after finishing his own work, he mentored 3 young people from his neighborhood, 2 young men and 1 young woman, all under 20, teaching them the fundamentals of the HVAC trade. He was giving them not just a skill, but a foundation. Marcus, now 40, moved with a new sense of purpose. The quiet grief he carried had been replaced by a quiet pride. He was wearing his usual work pants, but over them was a clean polo shirt with a small logo he'd designed himself, a stylized W made of a wrench and a thermostat. His deep brown skin glowed in the warm light as he pointed to a wiring diagram on the whiteboard. Okay, Tiffany, he said to a bright-eyed young woman with her hair in colorful box braids. Talk me through the low-voltage connections from the thermostat to the control board. She traced the lines with her finger, her voice confident. The R wire provides the 24-volt power. The G controls the fan. Y is for cooling, and W is for heat. He smiled. Exactly, you got this. The house itself felt different too. It was no longer haunted. He had repainted the interior in warm, welcoming colors. He had finally replaced the old water heater, a new ream unit that cost him $1,100. He spent his weekends in the garden, which was now bigger and more productive than ever. He gave away bags of fresh tomatoes and cucumbers to his neighbors. The house felt loved. It felt like his. He had followed the end of Simone's case through the public records. She and Kevin both pleaded guilty. They received 2 years of probation, a $10,000 fine each, and were ordered to complete 200 hours of community service. The felony conviction was a permanent mark on their records, a lasting consequence of their greed. He heard through the grapevine that she was working as a waitress in a diner, and Kevin was driving for a rideshare service. One evening, he sat on the back deck he had built, watching the sunset paint the Charlotte sky in shades of orange and purple. He held a simple glass of water, the ice cubes clinking softly. He thought about the past 2 years, the betrayal, the pain, the quiet, methodical fight for his own dignity. He had forgiven Simone. He had done it for himself months ago, in the quiet of his own heart. Forgiveness, he realized, wasn't about absolving the other person. It was about cutting the anchor that tied you to the shipwreck of the past. It was for his own peace, not her comfort. He had learned a hard, invaluable lesson. His father had been right. A person's foundation wasn't just a piece of property. True wealth wasn't measured in the price tag of a car or the square footage of a house. It wasn't in a $120,000 salary or a $900 blazer. True wealth, he now understood, was in your integrity. It was in the skills of your own 2 hands. It was in the knowledge you could pass on to others, building them up instead of tearing them down. It was in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, a garden well tended, and a life lived with honor. The real foundation was character. And unlike a house, that was something no one could ever sign away or steal. It was the only asset that truly belonged to you. Marcus found that his true foundation was not in a piece of paper, but in his own integrity and the community he was building. What did you think of his father's incredible gift? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of strength, justice, and the true meaning of a well-built life.